It was the summer of 2014. We were living in Israel, and we had missiles flying above our apartment. The shrapnel was falling in our backyard. I remember having to rush while I was pregnant to take my 1-year-old daughter out of the bathtub, run into the hallway, and wait to hear the boom from the Iron Dome, and then we were supposed to continue and go on with our regular day. And it continued like this day after day after day. And this is what life is like in Israel. This is something that many people become accustomed to, and it's a part of life, and they just say this is how it is. But my husband and I did not want this to be normalized. We did not want this to be the lifestyle for our children, so we made the decision to return back to Tampa, where I grew up. My husband is a brilliant man. He has a PhD in computer science. He has a master's and bachelor's in physics. I have 2 master's degrees. I also have a background in education. I'm an Alexander Technique teacher. We thought, how hard is it going to be to get a job in Tampa? So we came here completely naive. I grew up here. We have family here. We thought it would be a piece of cake. We thought we would only be staying with my mother for a few months. A few months turned into a year and 8 months. We had 2 small children. Her husband was not a fan. We were uncomfortable. And both my husband and I started to feel very, very depressed because our big dreams of coming to this wonderful city that I grew up in were slowly turning into a nightmare, and we thought maybe war was better than dealing with this state of financial woes, marital stress, family pressure. It was a lot to handle. We didn't know what to do. I remember one day a friend of mine, Ronit Tiagi, mentioned this thing called Toastmasters. And I thought, oh, okay, you go to this thing, great. I thought, people give toasts there, it must be a party. I didn't think anything of it. My husband was still having difficulty in the interview process, and a friend of ours said, go to Toastmasters. You'll meet connections, you'll network, it'll be a great opportunity for you to get a job. We came. I had the best time ever. I thought this is the coolest thing in the world, my kind of people, we talk. They give speeches, it's informative. My husband Eyal hated it. He thought this was so not for him, it made him completely uncomfortable. He was really grumpy and mad at me because we went there for him. He said, I'm never doing this. I, on the other hand, was sold and I joined right away. I was really happy to be a part of Toastmasters. Eyal continued in his way, interview after interview, rejection after rejection. And finally one day I asked him, what are you saying in these interviews? Like, I want you to tell me what happened. So he said, okay, they asked me if I was an expert, and I said no. I said, yeah, there's no one who's more of an expert than you. You're brilliant. You got published in Nature Communications. You are the nanotechnology, optical, everything expert. How could you say you're not an expert in an interview? And he said, only Einstein is an expert. So I said, hey, you're just not getting it. You don't get the American way. You don't understand how it works. In America, you have to sell yourself. It's this thing that's called a little fabrication. I do it very well. You do it very poorly. I can make myself sound a lot better than I am, and he will make himself sound a million times worse. Needless to say, I met some wonderful people in Toastmasters. The first was Chris Bloch that I spoke with, and I met him after one of we were over at the Grillsmith. And I just kind of talked to him for a little bit, and he said, I think maybe I can help you. And he did. He started talking to my husband, and it gave him a little bit of a boost of confidence. And Eyal did a little better. He actually got an interview for Google in California, which was great. Didn't get the job. I was desperate, so I went to Frank. Now, Frank is really the savior, and he's kind of like the hero of the story, so I just want to point that out. Because Frank and Joe Jones have this organization called Transition Masters, and while my husband hated Toastmasters, he loved Transition Masters. It was one-on-one, and Frank helped him so much. Eyal began to understand the seriousness of the business, and it was presented to him in a way that he was able to feel like he could accomplish something. And the structure was really a good fit for my husband. Needless to say, after a few sessions with Frank, Eyal was working in some part-time kind of realm at a startup, and they hired him full-time. So that was a nice progression, but still we were not making enough money to really justify all the expenses that we made with coming here, bringing our kids here, paying through the roof for childcare. And we were still frustrated and we didn't know what to do. Meanwhile, I was starting my own business with the Alexander technique that many of you have heard me speak about. But it wasn't really moving in the direction that we'd wanted at the rate we wanted. One day, we met Frank by chance in the mall at Citrus Park. And we kind of talked a little bit. It was in the food court. We said, maybe, we'll give this thing another shot. And sure enough, Eyal had a couple of important interviews coming up, and Frank was kind enough to meet with my husband. Eyal had 2 interviews. One was in Melbourne and one was in Orlando. Eyal got the job in Melbourne. He is there right now. We are moving. And I have Frank to thank for that. And I wanted to come tonight and just express my gratitude for this club, for what it meant to me personally, the friendships. Remember, Leslie mentioned in one of her speeches about New Year's resolutions, and my New Year's resolution this year was to really come to Toastmasters more. And I was starting out doing that, but then the whole move and everything happened, so I couldn't continue coming every week like I wanted to. But Anita, Renato, Mano, I mean, you've touched me deeply with your kindness, just the support. This has been to me so much more than just a club or meetings. It has personally been adult time that I needed, and just informative, fun, enjoyable on every level. So I'm going to miss you all. I thank you all, and I hope to come back and visit.